welcome to MotorInc First. This is supposed to be a big one. People have waited a long time for this. And just before we started recording, he was sitting here singing a song from Ram Lakhan, which I have decided to twist into 2-door ka 4, 4-door ka 1. And the reason why we're going here is because Manmoji is here with us and he's going to tell us everything about... Manmoji is MM, okay? That's the reference. He's going to tell us about the Mahindra Thar Roxx. I would really want to discuss the name, but we'll come back to it. I don't think I've encountered a name that is this conflicting in a really long time. But where should we begin with this?
Since he started on this, Ram Lakhan, 1, 2 ka 4 is the song. YouTube it, and then you can say it according. You can say the lines in that tune. It sounds cool.
Yeah.
Okay. You started with MM, and I think that's where I want to start.
All right.
Before we get to the Thar Roxx. Because my first reaction to the car is nothing to do with the machine.
Okay.
It is to do with that name.
Okay.
Because we've said this, that, when we drive Mahindra cars, so often you get that feeling that there are children working inside who are excited about making cars.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing.
Which is a good thing.
But this feels childish. It's not childish enthusiasm, this just feels childish.
Oh, the class teacher left for a while?
Yeah, it's like, okay, nobody's looking, let's make it Thar Roxx. It sounds cool, right?
Yeah.
And to me, that's... And the same idea also, the two things that just did not work was the name and also the design.
Okay.
It's from the side, when you look at it, that little bit of a slant, so to speak, that they've given to this 5-door, which is over the second door, the new doors.
Yeah.
It kicks up a bit and then it drops down. It feels so unnecessary. I don't have a reason. We did ask Mahindra, is this done so that they don't get sued by Jeep for being a rip-off of the Wrangler? But we don't have an answer on that. My guess is, yes, that is one of the reasons.
Okay.
And this is a little bit of a hole that they're in, that they've built the brand around this,
Correct.
which is effectively DNA that's been borrowed as much as it's part of their history.
Correct.
It comes from Jeep.
Yeah.
So it will always be a me too. And having to work around things like this takes away from the joy and the soul of the vehicle as well.
Yeah, and it will interrupt their flow when it comes to trying to design something. Because I think they're trapped in this idea that it needs to look like this.
Yeah.
And they can't really change there unless they make a dramatic difference. And it's a very weird battle to fight. I see why Mahindra would fight it, right?
Yeah.
They've spent years building this brand up from the CJs and the MM540s and all of that, where all of this was part of the same setup. And now you're saying we don't have 7 slats, we have 6 slats.
Correct. So I was just going to say, the one difference here from the Thar 3-door to the 5-door is that the grille is different.
Right, and think about it, right? If Mahindra was making really terrible cars as a rule, then I would accept that this is a lifeline and they need it.
Dude.
But the XUV 700, 00 if you prefer, the XUV 700, the Thar itself as a vehicle, forget the design for a minute. And I'm assuming the Thar Roxx goes to the same place in terms of competence. It says Mahindra's engineering is fundamentally good. It says their engines are respectable engines on their own without any reference to any legacy history or whatever.
Stop.
What?
Very good
Too much?
point. No.
Oh, good point. Okay.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Because again, Mahindra, and this is the other side of it. We said that we saw Mahindra trajectory change, what we thought of Mahindra, what they could do.
Correct.
From 2020, which started with the Thar.
Yeah.
It went another notch up with the XUV 700 and then another direction with the Scorpio N. So like 3 vehicles back to back, we saw them do cool stuff.
Correct.
Show that this is a new Mahindra.
Correct.
And then kind of the trajectory went not flat, even a bit low with what happened with the XUV 400.
It's like they came into focus and then they it dissipated a little bit.
Yeah. Now with this, again, you'll get the sense that, hey, that line continues now. So it shows you're right, that their ability to, and engines, I'm going to say this again and again, yes, there have been issues with the engines in terms of some updates were required, some hardware was changed, etc. But they are great engines. We've called them world class, and it's for a reason. The kind of refinement, the performance, and the ability that they're bringing, just the ease of usability,
Correct.
is impressive.
Correct.
So they are a great company. They
So,
are
so
making
that's what I'm
great
saying.
stuff.
So when a company has these kind of strengths, do they really need to get trapped into this unnecessary battle as far as I'm concerned?
This is taking me back to the conversation we had about the Javas, where it's like heritage. They've come to a certain this. Now what happens after this?
Correct.
They have this road vehicles, which you have the XUV and all. They've expanded that range, and they are taking those forward. But what happens here? How long can you continue to do it in the? Oh, we are the affordable Wrangler or the affordable Jeep instead of being yourself. So.
Yeah. And if it means the invention of a design language, I think it's an opportunity and not a problem. People trust the Mahindra brand, and for a reason. And if Mahindra were to evolve this Wrangler derivative design language to something completely unique, fresh, and new, I don't know that there'd automatically be objection. I don't think it would automatically considered a violation of the history or legacy, if you want to put it like that.
Yep.
But I think it would remove this trap that they're in. This is what happened with the Roxx in the US.
Yes.
This is exactly what happened with the court cases in the Australian world.
At this point, I think there's the other side of this product, which is the Thar brand.
Yeah.
We should accept that it's a lifestyle brand.
Yeah, and therefore not a mass market or volume thing.
And in this, the analogy that I want to give is what would for other markets be the dream of having a convertible.
Correct.
It's impractical. It's not a family vehicle per se.
No.
It's not all-season vehicle. It's an indulgence. The Thar and these off-road vehicles are that indulgence for the Indian market.
Correct.
Is the satisfaction you get looking at it. Is the satisfaction you get when you are looked at when you're in it. It is that. Accept it. And the numbers also indicate that, because the rear-wheel drive Thar, when I asked Mahindra about this, they said it sells about 40% or so. They were not sure, but other news reports have said that it was as high as 50%. I won't be surprised if it's even more. And with the Roxx coming in, I think that number is going to go higher up, that the rear-wheel drive will account for more and more.
Yeah.
Because what people really want is the attention out of this car. And I got to tell you, when I was driving this around Pune, I knew what it felt like to be in Taliban country driving a brand new Hilux with a bow on the hood. The amount of attention it got, the number of vehicles with pitch black glasses that rolled up next door. I couldn't see who's driving, but they are just driving next to me and looking at, it's Innova slowed down, three-door Thar slowed down. Everybody just made way because they're like, oh, this has come.
So it does rock a little bit.
Yeah, the kind of attention it gets is incredible. And it's amazing because looking at it coming head on, would it look that distinctive? I hadn't thought so.
No, because the slats are weird, so it does get attention.
Oh, man. So, okay, coming to that, between the Thar and the Roxx, there's a significant difference, of course, in terms of the size. It's longer, it's wider, it's taller, all of that. We'll put up the specs because there's a lot between the Thar 3-door and the Scorpio N that we'll be talking about, because there are things that you can refer to between these two vehicles when getting a sense of where this is at. Because you should remember that the Scorpio N is built on the Thar 3-doors platform.
Scorpio N is Thar 3-door, okay.
Okay. It takes that base, stretches it out to become a 5-door, but a more sophisticated vehicle, a Scorpio N. Between the Scorpio N and the Thar 5-door, Roxx. Roxx.
5-door actually is a great name for this car. I would have called it the Thar 5DO.
5DO, 5DO.
Look, you have to have an O at the end of Mahindra's names, right? Thar 5DO.
5-door. 5X. Anyways, so coming back to the Scorpio N. The Scorpio N is a stretched Thar. In terms of size, how these three stack up is Thar is the smallest, the 5-door sits in between, and the Scorpio N is the biggest.
All right.
Okay. Is the longest. The Thar 5-door is taller. The interesting thing that about the hardware on the Roxx is that while it's not as long as the Scorpio N, its wheelbase is much longer.
Okay.
And this is one of the things that is built on a new platform. It's not using the platform that's used on the Scorpio N.
Okay.
Yeah. So you'll wonder why. And I asked him why. No clear answer. But Sirish from Evo, he had posted this, that it has something to do with the platform, either who has the IP to the Thar platform.
Okay.
It's apparently Magna.
Okay.
And so it must be costing them more. This is a homegrown platform that they're building now, along with which, I mean, the cost aspect of it. The other side is they obviously wanted to make it with modern day tech.
You're implying that the Scorpio and the Thar aren't modern day tech and materials?
They're not as modern as this.
Okay.
So now when you hear what has gone into this platform, so it's built differently. Okay. There are more pieces to it. There's more lateral connections. So all of which makes it lighter.
Okay.
All of which makes it stronger. So it's stiffer, which is the ultimate achievement you can get for when you're building the backbone of your vehicle.
Right.
That automatically should have effects on how the car drives and behaves. So they built a new platform for this car. Now my automatic thought for this is, this now needs to go back to the Scorpio N.
Right. How old is the Scorpio N in the market now?
Scorpio N is a couple of years old now.
So another year and a half, 2 years to a facelift.
I don't know if they should actually.
Which is to me the logical point at which they could make a platform change if they have to.
Yeah.
Right? Similarly for the Thar, Thar has also been on the market for a similar time period now.
Thar came in 2020.
A little bit longer than that.
Yeah. Thar was the first of the new generation.
So then the Thar platform, the Thar should move on to this new, stronger and lighter platform, if for nothing else because it's less expensive.
It should. This platform should automatically then go to everything else.
Okay.
It will have, of course, the 4x4. It will have all that ability in terms of the 4x4 specs, approach, departure, and all of that is pretty much the same, except the ramp over angle, which is...
Because of the length of the wheelbase will be different.
Wheelbase.
Yeah.
And they haven't shared the ground clearance.
Yes, of course. Why would they?
So none of this...
No, you should know this, okay? Between the new taxation laws about what classifies as an SUV or not and how serious we are about off-roading, ground clearance is an irrelevant issue. You don't need to know. Trust me, you don't need to know. Mahindra officially said we don't know what the ground clearance is.
We'll have to check.
I'll tell you how much. It is about that much. That's about as accurate as Mahindra has told us so far.
So I'll tell you why. Again, now this is an interesting reason. They explain why that they are now kind of being cagey about it, because people are mentioning, I mean, manufacturers are mentioning the boot space thing, right? This level or that level. So that's the issue, because people are mentioning ground clearance with in an unladen state, so without any weight on it. Whereas the government says it should be when it's loaded. So it's the least amount of ground clearance effectively.
It's supposed to be minimum ground clearance, ideally. Yes. Yeah. Because that's a useful number. Maximum ground clearance is not a very useful number.
So that's the reason why now they're saying, because it just looks silly, because you'll have some hatchback which has 180 something mm, and that's not the real, I mean, that's not the actual figure.
Okay. How much effort would it be to just give you both the numbers?
Correct. So anyways,
wow,
let's get past it.
It's so difficult. Minimum and maximum ground clearance. Oh my God. To have two numbers separated by a hyphen that suggests minimum and max. Man, that's a lot of work.
Okay, since we're on this topic, we'll also talk about boot space.
Let's talk about boot space.
Because the exciting number is 600 something. And that's all the way up.
Of course.
And
so the Hyundai figure.
Yeah, you could put it that way. Or the Tata figure.
I'm only saying Hyundai figure because this I heard for the first time from a Hyundai.
Oh yeah?
MotorInc First, I think.
The first time that I remember of it was from the Punch actually, because that's when the first time I experienced it. But yeah, I think we discussed it during the Exter.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Punch was the first time I experienced the two different ways of measuring.
Right.
And it's the same thing over there. 600 something figures all the way up. And the other figure, which is a far more humble number, it's a far more humble number, is 400 something, is up to the seat back height.
Okay, forget the numbers for a minute. Is it a useful boot?
It's way, way better than what the 3-door had. This is properly usable. But again, I'm going to say that it's high. So
loading things may be a challenge, but if you can manage that, then there's no real...
Yeah, because you can still use the height to pack in a lot. So it's a...
Okay.
So we're coming to the...
So it's not one of those 5-seaters where there's nothing behind the 5th seat.
No. So this is not a 7-seater at all.
Correct.
Right?
But that's only because there's no Wrangler 7-seater, right?
I say, shots have been fired.
It was there.
So, again, Scorpio N is a 7-seater. This is not. So, the Scorpio N, the issue was that the seats used to sit in the boot.
Yeah, if I remember right, the XUV 700 in the 7-seat configuration also has a relatively tiny boot.
It's not as big as you'd expect, but the Scorpion genuinely has an issue because its third row of seats just sit there eating up space in the boot.
Right.
Whereas at least in the XV700, they tuck away. So with the boot is usable. Now this is where we're coming to the practicality conversation. The biggest issue with the three-door was that it wasn't practical from a family. That is later.
But it rocked.
The rocking angle is later.
Okay.
So this, from practicality standpoint, is covering up the basic misses of the Thar, which is to say boot space was terrible. You could either have luggage for a trip or
People.
Second, the rear set of doors gives you direct access to the third row.
Yeah.
Now the wheelbase
Second row.
Sorry, what did I say?
Third row.
Oh, sorry. Second row. The wheelbase is also much longer, like we said. Compared to the Thar itself, it's much larger. And compared to the Scorpio N also, it's longer. Access to the third row, practical stuff we'll just clear up. As a family car, for elders in the family, to get into the back will be a struggle because it is high. You do have a side step, which is helpful, but it is a climb.
It's a climb. Yeah.
Even for me to get in, you reach for the grab handle to pull yourself in. So in that sense, not the easiest car to get into. But in the back seat, now this is comfortable enough for city use. I am not going to say that this has suddenly become a do-it-all, family-friendly car in the sense that get in, go for a long drive, and you'll be comfortable. If you're a 6-footer sitting in the back over distances, you will feel that the seat is not supportive enough if you don't have enough room to push ahead. But for city use or for, average size adults like me for short trips, spending an hour and a half, you're fine.
Okay.
Right? That is okay. Looking at the car on the outside, you imagine huge amount of space on the inside.
Right.
It's not that much, but it is now usable. It is convenient enough to be a family car.
Okay.
The Thar...
But with the way you're phrasing it, sounds like it's reached some hygiene number rather than some magic number.
Exactly. Okay. So as the Thar 3-door, I would have said that can be your third or fourth car in the family.
This can be a second.
This can be a second. Okay. Like genuinely, if you think about it, this thing is massive.
Yeah.
It is big.
On the outside at least.
Yeah. But you're not getting that much utility on the inside. The boot space, for instance, it would be as much as an Elevate. Actually, I think the Elevate has more.
No, the Elevate is the class leading in that. It's 600 something, you said.
It's 400 and something, 60 or something like that. So that's definitely more than what this has by the seat height measurement thing. Yeah. That's a big boot. So it's not like suddenly you're getting
so at the engineering measurement, not the marketing measurement of the boot space.
Well done. Okay. So it's not going to be immediately because of all of this, this wow, SUV for the family now. Okay. But it's hit a middle ground, which will make it the most attractive Thar for somebody who's been wanting to get a Thar.
Fair enough. Good job.
Okay. In terms of pricing as well, it's sitting in between the 3-door and the Scorpio N. In some ways, I was just looking at the prices. The petrol is in fact even more affordable here in the Roxx than it is in the Thar.
Oh, how?
Yeah. So they've got maybe a lower variant in this.
Like that.
So that way. But the engines are the same, but they're in a higher state of tune than in the Thar. And slightly lower for the petrol where compared to the Scorpion. Scorpion gets 202 horsepower.
Yeah.
This is 180 or something like that. Anyways, we'll put up the specs. So it sits somewhere in the middle for the petrols. The diesel is on par with the Scorpion. In fact, the lower tune of the diesel, this is a lot to take in because there is a lot of combinations that you can get in terms of engine. The same engine is available in 2 states of tune for horsepower. There are 2 different states of tune for torque, and depending on what transmission you get the torque and stuff like that. So it is a bit complicated. So just simplifying it, it sits in the middle by and large between the Scorpio N and the Thar.
Right.
Okay. That's as simple as that. The same 2-liter petrol.
Which of these vehicles did you drive?
So there's the 2-liter petrol, and then there's the 2.
In which state of tune did you drive it? The high horsepower or the low torque?
And the 2.2-liter diesel, which is the one we drove with the full power, which is 175 horsepower, something like that, with the 6-speed automatic.
Okay.
So we've covered the basics.
Yeah.
The beauty of this car, and there is a beauty, is how they have managed, and this is why I said, this car shows what Mahindra can do. This homegrown platform of theirs has impressed with how well it behaves. I'm going to be clear here. How well it behaves by this category standard.
Ladder frame chassis standard.
Exactly. It is not going to be as comfortable. It is not going to be as tireless as a Grand Vitara to travel with, as a Creta or something like that. Basically, a road-biased vehicle will be far more comfortable over longer distances. It will be far more convenient. But what they have managed here is special.
Yeah.
It is way better than the Thar. Way better. And the feeling was that it's easy to drive.
Oh, that's very good for the car this size.
It's impressive. The word that I used for it when I drove back on the highway was, I could thread a line.
That's cool. For a car this size and this kind of weight and driving position, etc., that's saying a lot.
It now gets an electronic power steering, which is really easy to use. In the city, it's light, convenient. On the highway, right amount of information, precision, so that you can control this car easily.
Right.
In fact, in some of the twisty bits, it was wet, and I was pushing the car to see when it would misbehave. It would be clean, 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 and to the point where you're like, come on, we can do more. And before anything would happen, the ESP would kick in. It would slow the car down before it got to a point where it will get ill-mannered.
Right.
Great experience.
And before you think this requires a lot of speed to do, on the Mumbai-Pune Expressway, it's a fairly slippery road now because it's really old concrete. There are some really tight turns. You can do this at really low speeds where you're not going ridiculously fast, but you can see the limit arriving because the road is just about to give up. And the fact that the ESP arrives before that and controls the situation before you can push it to that, that's good.
This driving aspect of it is one of the bits that really clicked for me. I mean, that sense was growing, but it really clicked for me on the way back. It's one of the last things that clicked, but it's, I think, for me, one of the most impactful things because I can't imagine driving that way in the Scorpio N.
Correct.
The Scorpio N rolls, you feel its weight.
Yeah,
and this car
famously rolls.
And this car on paper is taller than the Scorpio N.
But more controlled anyway. That's awesome.
So we asked Mahindra whether how is the suspension tune different, and I didn't get an answer on that. We did ask them, are the suspension components...
Yeah, but see, look, go back to their childish analogy. Children don't know how they've done something. It's very, very common, right? When you arrive in the kitchen and there's like broken glass all over the floor and you ask the child, what happened? And they're like, I don't know. You're the only one in the house, yeah, but I don't know what happened. It happens. Completely happens. I'm on your side here, Mahindra.
So between the Thar, the Scorpio and this...
No, there's a better way to refer to this. It's the Thar Roxx and Rolls.
Roxx, oh my
That's
God.
the full ladder frame lineup of Mahindras, okay? Thar, Roxx and Rolls.
Don't forget the OG.
Which is the OG now?
Bolero.
Bolero is not part of this set. This is the upwardly mobile set. Did I just say that?
So I would have assumed that they've played part spin. Okay, the frame is new, but I have double wishbone suspension at the front. I have the same multi-link at the rear with the Watts link and all of that. That's all Scorpio and stuff.
Correct.
But what I was told was none of this is shared with the Scorpio N. Because the mounting points are different, the frame is different, all of it is different.
So full re-engineering of full suspension has happened again, which is awesome. I mean, in theory, this is like one of the, if I were a cynic, this is one of the simplest cars to make, right? Take the Thar, make it longer, and whatever doesn't fit will come from the Scorpio and job done. Yeah, right? Simple, but they didn't do that, which is awesome.
So this is exactly it. I thought it was a complete parts bin car, right? You take that chassis, you take that transmission, you take that engine, put it together,
Correct.
Body was there, you add 2 doors at the back, done.
Yeah.
But no.
And then only the slat design has to be changed and we are gold.
Which they did. But
Which they did.
The interesting thing is, there's so much that's changed. So like the suspension bit, I was trying to understand how the hell have they managed this? Because for me, one of the things that was just impressive was that considering that this now, the top spec, which we drove, has 19-inch wheels. The overall size of the overall diameter is the same as the Thar, which runs on 18s and doesn't get 19s. This gets 18s as standard and steps up to 19s for the top variant.
Right.
The wheel control, see, the larger the wheel gets,
Correct.
the bigger the tire, the more weight it has, and to control that is always the hard thing.
Yeah.
Especially on these ladder frames.
Yeah, think about his momentum, okay? First, that wheel will be hard to deflect. Once it has been deflected by a bump or a steering, then it has lots of momentum moving.
Yeah.
Right, and that the suspension has to be able to stay in control so that the body remains where you need it to be as an engineer trying to control the experience so it doesn't rock and roll, right? So the heavier and larger this wheel gets, the harder and harder the job becomes.
So the wheel control that they managed to get is, I mean, we have a couple of these really nice test bits around the office where there are two manhole covers, one after the other, nice sharp edges, nice and deep.
Yeah.
And not, I mean, it's deeper than that.
Yeah, I know exactly the ones he's talking about. Yeah.
Because when you go through them on any car, they are sure to rattle you. And this, how nicely it went through that. The control was great. The lateral means how much when you're turning, how the body moves. That control was also good. It felt controlled. It didn't just keep going like that.
Now I'm desperate for all of this to move to the Thar and the Scorpio both.
Thar, I don't know if they can do it, but Scorpio, 100%. I would want it. Because, okay, there'll be more comparisons. Anyways, coming back here, so suspension, that's huge improvement. So much so, why did I drive it more in the city? Because there's a story to this. When I had taken the Scorpio N back home, I take my son for his classes on the weekend. So, and he's there, my wife's there, and she was sitting in the back. And she told me within the first 10 minutes of being in the car, if you ever get this car again,
Correct.
do not ask me to come along.
Correct.
She gets car sick really quickly.
No, and not just Vinita, this is for us also. We very early in motoring, we went to shoot a film, and in that we had a Grand Vitara and the Scorpio. And on the way back, the crews that were sitting in these two cars swapped, and the senior members of the crew were sitting in the Scorpio, and that didn't last very long because there were very furious phone calls saying, no, we want to swap cars, you stop now. And then rank was pulled, and the seniors moved back into the Grand Vitara because they just couldn't handle the second row experience of the Scorpio. So it actually happened in both these situations. And Vinita, I'm with you here.
Yeah, no, I get it. So this time when I went home, I said, okay, we'll go. I need to go. We'll come along. So I asked her to come along and asked her to sit in the back. And I drove and she was like, this is nice. Lots of space in the back. Very nice and tall. I'm enjoying sitting here. And then she, of course, noticed that the window is split. The rear window, one part of it is fixed and only one part goes down. It's like, oh, feels like an old school car because of this. So all these observations from her.
And she didn't notice.
Came back.
Yeah.
I actually had to ask her, so what did you think of the car? She didn't volunteer any opinion. Otherwise,
Right.
usually if you don't like something, it's like, never again.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
In this, it was like, yeah, it was nice. I said, okay, this is not right. Maybe we didn't drive long enough. So I created another excuse. Then the next day we went again. Same situation, longer drive, more broken roads, all of that. The only time that something struck her was when we went over speed breaker a little bit faster,
Right.
where then it goes,
Correct.
it starts doing its rocking thing. That was the one time I said, oh, this moves. But that was it. It was done.
Correct.
So this was a very important test.
Yeah, and from whatever he's saying, I can infer that this is a big step from the Scorpio. Big step.
It's a big step. And for me as a driver, massive improvement from the Thar. For passengers, big improvement over the Scorpio N. So as a package, this is wrapping up to be a solid package that way. So the suspension, clear. Refinement, which was one of the biggest annoyances in the Thar.
And refinement for the Thar, and I'm assuming is mostly NVH control rather than any significant smoothness or engine issue.
Correct. The engine was never, not a problem, petrol or diesel. It was just how noisy it got and the suspension aspect of it, which this has already fixed. Now with this, because it's a completely closed cabin, and yes, it's a closed cabin, generally the refinement levels are very good. You don't hear the engine inside very much. It's just a very light rumble. That too, when you're cruising, you'll hear it a little bit. The smoothness is great. The cabin is quiet. And in fact, I think it's from mid-spec MX3 variant or something like that. You'll have to check. But it gets, the windscreen is a special windscreen to cut down sound. So they have made all those additions. So if you're buying the lower variants, I know the prices are very attractive, but it might not be this experience.
It might not be as quiet as the upper variants
Right?
because of
And
this.
I would want that 100% if I'm getting this car and meaning to use it on a regular basis, because these are the small things that really add up. And in a car like this, you'll want it because it's this square shape. When you're on the highway, you will hear the wind. And that's despite this windscreen, despite everything else that they've done, you still hear it. It's an inefficient shape.
Yeah.
So it not only is it inefficient, it's also becomes noisy with that. So the quietness and the smoothness that you feel in this cabin makes it all the more enjoyable.
Right.
I am taken aback with the different speeds that I could drive at in the city. So I'm not saying driving fast, but in the Scorpio N, I just ended up being careful and going over speed breakers and more bumpy stuff.
Correct.
I just had to be careful. That was my default. I remember I used to, I had a Wagoner pass me while going over a speed breaker because he could go over it faster.
Correct.
Whereas in the Scorpion, you'd just be going this. In this, you'd still have that, but not as much.
Right.
So the friend that I met who has a 3-door Thar, and I took him for a ride. And the first thing he got was like, man, this is so quiet. And he felt the steering and he's like, my God, this is so smooth. And we drove out and there's this, the road is, now you know how all the cement roads have made the surfaces higher. So to get up, you have a ramp and then an off ramp.
Yeah.
So when we went over that, he was like, oh, it still does this. But it's like it's more controlled now.
Yeah.
We did a 2-minute chakkar, no more than that. As in, we took a 2-minute drive around just for him to get a sense of the car. And his only takeaway was, I'll get this when they bring the interiors in black or a darker shade, because the interiors are right now in white. He said, there's no way I'm going to have a car. This is going to be a pain to clean.
Right.
So we are just throwing it on the side here because this is an obvious flaw, because the car that we have was used by a lot of journalists. I'm sure driven down from Kochi up to Mumbai, and it had brown blotchy marks all over the seats.
And the car drives well, so the brown blotches are just accumulated dirt, nothing else. I'm just clarifying.
I mean, think about it from a driving experience standpoint. This is a sweet little middle ground. I just wish it didn't have that silliness wrapping it up.
Right.
It would have just been a great package for Mahindra to again point in which direction that they're going.
Sure.
Small stuff, lots of small stuff that we can quickly wrap up. Typical Mahindra things that we're expecting. I almost feel guilty now. I feel like I've offended the computer because now the chimes are so quiet. So quiet. There are times I thought I couldn't hear them.
Which chimes?
The indicator chimes. Remember in the XUV 300 we said they were 3XO and the 400, they were so loud.
Yeah.
In this now they've muted them down and they are so discreet.
Oh, no. That's because of the new, this called, you've heard CAFE, Corporate Average Fuel Economy? This is CAVE, Corporate Average.
Volume efficiency.
So if you're going to make a loud car, then you need to make a quiet car to compensate.
So
these are what? Seatbelt chimes and the 80-kilometer chime and the 120 kmph chime and stuff like that.
And the indicator chimes. So
I'm okay with quiet chimes. Honestly, I don't know that I constantly want this car to keep reminding me. I think I drive well enough not to need this much input.
So Mahindra, you made this step. The other step you need to make is with the driver's instrument cluster, which is this full digital one for the high variant. And in that, this is something, I don't know, both Tata and Mahindra keep doing it again and again, which is as soon as an indication needs to be given, it jumps from wherever I was. Why does it have to be like that? And there's too much information being provided through that instrument cluster. Just because it can be done doesn't mean it should be done. It has a so now this car gets front parking sensors, rear parking sensors. It has a 360-degree camera. So yeah, okay, let's do this quickly. It gets a lot of the goodies, which are car goodies.
Right.
Like the Scorpio N got, so it gets a 360-degree camera, front parking sensors. It's got ventilated seats. Oh my God, its sunroof is massive. It's the size of a swimming pool, and it's shaped like that as well.
So all the kids can go out in one shot.
In one shot. It's huge. And it's kind of strange looking because it's like it leaves a foot from the sides on both sides. So it's like down the middle, like a kind of like a mohawk. So but it's huge. It's really huge. So the Mahindra things we would.
So is there a new word for it? Because clearly panoramic doesn't cover it anymore.
No. So I think I don't know, skylight or something.
Sky panel? Did they call it a sky panel?
Hey, that's a nice one, man. Shubhi, you got a future there, man. You got a dark future. Okay, fine.
If naming sunroofs was a dark future, I think there'll be moonroofs then, no?
वो भी है, वो तो हो चुका है, moonroof तो हो चुका है. Feature-wise, it's kitted out. Its pricing on the top end is a bit lower than the Scorpio N.
Okay.
And just for the record, right now when we are talking about this, we don't have the full pricing in the sense that the four-wheel drive pricing has not come out.
These are only rear-wheel drive prices that you're going to see on the screen.
Yeah. So that's up to 20.5 lakh, which means It's a bit cheaper than an equivalent Scorpio N by 2 lakhs or so, and right in the ballpark of the Creta, Seltos.
I was going to ask you, so if you were to make a decision between Creta and the Thar 5-door, the Roxx, which car should you be rocking every day?
It's simple. I mean, if this is your primary car, do it all. I will always pick the more convenient option if I'm clear that this is about convenience. You have to be clear about that. If you're saying this is a lifestyle choice, then by all means pick the Roxx. It is now practical enough. There are trade-offs. Like if you tell me to drive this regularly, long distances, this is not my scene.
Got it.
It is not my scene.
So the more serious the car is as a utility role in your life, the more you're likely to end up with a Creta or a Seltos or something like that.
Grand Vitara.
Grand Vitara, etc., etc. The less serious this is, the more you'll be okay with whatever the Roxx gives and happy with what it does really well.
Like I would not. Okay, so this is the story. You know, back at Autocar, Osif Chaco. I know some of you said we should explain who this is. He was our colleague, my colleague at Autocar, and now a lot of you may know him as this off-road instructor for two-wheelers. He rides bikes the dirt a lot now. So he back then used to be doing off-road in cars, Thars specific, and he used to just be raving about the Thar.
Right.
And this one time we had to do an off-road story. I was doing the story. So we had to go take all the cars from Mumbai to Lonavala. And because of all of Osif's raving, I said, I'll drive the Thar. And this is the first gen Thar I'm talking about.
Right.
And it had off-road tires and all of that. Before I got to Lonavala,
Yeah, you were already exhausted by this
I
car.
was cursing Osif.
Correct.
And I was cursing the Thar because the tires were bumpy, the car was just jiggling up and down, and it was noisy, it was tiring.
Right.
I said, I don't even want to drive it back. The story is fine. After that, I'm not driving this on the way back.
Correct.
Then the Thar, the second gen, 3-door, we got it. And the rear wheel drive specifically, which is as uncomfortable as the 4x4.
Right.
So I drove it from here to Pune and back, and I did it. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't pleasant either.
Right.
After having it got to Mumbai, if you told me, Chal, we need to go back to Pune, let's go, I would look for another car. In this, the Roxx, I would make that trip again in this car.
Correct. But with a Creta on this trip, you just never think about this at all. This would just be like, yeah, okay, let's do that.
It's
Understood.
just what it is.
Understood.
Right? So, because I'll explain the small stuff. Because of the structure, there is a slight resonance. You get this dull, that slight is there in the background. It's something that you'll think about when you drive a 3-cylinder. At low revs, you'll get that little bit of that, not exactly buzz, but it's that deep rumble kind of sense in the background. And this is something that does tie you over time. On the expressway, it's not the smoothest expressway, but you're constantly getting a little bit of that movement.
Right.
And this is on the expressway.
Yeah, and a ladder frame can control it only to a certain extent. Beyond that, you can't. Okay, I was when I went to ride the Hero Destiny, my drop to the airport was in Nakrista. And now Goa has these long concrete highways that run through this to the state, and that makes it very easy to get around. But Krista will continue to rock through the whole thing because it just cannot control beyond a point. And this concrete is just like small irregularities one after the other. So you're constantly going like this through the entire trip. You get used to it, but it's not the most pleasant thing. And any monocoque car in the same situation would just iron most of it out.
Correct. So this is not about budget, because even if you were to get into a Jeep Wrangler,
I would do the same thing. Yeah.
it'll do the same.
And I've driven the Wrangler long ago on the Rubicon Trail, and off-road, the thing is mind-boggling. But we got back to the trailhead after one day into the trail and one day out of the trail, driving from the trailhead to the hotel in the Lake Tahoe area, and that 25-mile trip, those 25 miles, I don't want to remember, right? Because all the qualities that I loved on the trail, where it would do impossible things, especially under guidance from the spotters who were telling us where to put the wheels and stuff. You come to the road and you go like this, and you're like, it's not turning, right? And you have to reset the fact that it will turn slower and it'll have reactions and it'll roll the other way and stuff. And it took a while for those 25 kilometers to settle in. So when I see, videos of Americans driving Wranglers around, I don't know how they're doing it on a daily basis.
So this is the same thing. Even in America, it's about the imagery more
Correct.
than the practicality.
Yeah.
It's the same thing the world over. Nobody is buying it because it makes your life more convenient.
No.
You're buying it because you look cool. And in this case, with the Roxx, with the coolness of the Thar, you're also getting a great dose of practicality now, where I would be okay to travel in it. I would be okay to drive it for extended periods. Still not a primary car for me.
Correct.
Still the secondary car. A lifestyle choice, stressing on that here. You have to be in that mindset to really make
Understood.
the most out of it.
Understood.
Right? So, equipment wise, we've
Covered everything. What is left? Crash test safety?
one sec, we didn't speak about the details. So the Mahindra things, which includes the good and the bad, where they've toned down some things. The menus for the instrument cluster should become easier. What I was gonna tell you about over there was with the front parking sensors and the 360-degree camera. It has now, every time I was parked on the side of the road and I was trying to, when we are driving, we take a lot of pictures to clock, to note the odometer and all of that. Every time a vehicle drove past, it would give me a message on the instrument cluster saying 60 centimeters away, vehicle is passing. 30 centimeters away. Like, dude, I don't want to. I mean, this so much information should not be coming through my instrument
But it's again like a child, Kartik. You know how a child likes to tell you everything that they've just finished doing?
Dude, that is so true though. It's constantly doing
It's
that.
constant, right? That's
Yeah.
what children do.
And I
know this despite the fact that I don't even have children.
So I think this is a problem with how we are executing digital real estate, especially in the driver's instrument cluster, which should not be the case. It should be minimal information, easy to read, and useful. That is how it should be, full stop. It should be on a need to know basis, not just dal do.
You deal with it, yeah.
Yeah. So the touchscreen, so they've really stepped up. The touchscreen is a 10-inch touchscreen, looks good, sharp. But that
What?
has Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. No,
Yeah.
it doesn't have CarPlay.
No?
No, it doesn't have CarPlay. Not right now. The brochure bravely just says that.
So this is the same as the chip shortage days when everything is coming next.
So it will come later.
So Adreno X, the X stands for when it will arrive, which is an unknown.
Yeah, the timeline of when it's going to come.
Okay, fair enough.
So this is the small stuff. It has 2 drive modes, zip and zoom. They don't have zap in between or something like that. One of them. They usually have 3. They have 2 more off-road modes. Didn't try the off-road modes. Tried the 2 drive modes. The lower one is good enough for everyday driving. Engine is smooth. The automatic transmission feels a bit jumpy when you just start off. It has auto hold, so that it feels like the brakes remain locked for a little longer.
And then suddenly they release.
Yeah, so and it's a big car for it to do that.
Right.
You get used to it. Overall, drives easy. The features work well. A lot of the steering is from the Scorpio N. It's leather wrapped. The seats are leather wrapped, ventilated. So everything looks premium aside from the experience. It also looks rich. The dash has leather on it. So everything has been stepped up in terms of sense of premiumness, the experience of premiumness. All that is there. The driving experience is better because the track width is more. It's wider. Which is why it also feels more controlled. So that's part of the reason.
Sure.
Now, this width you can see on paper, but the cabin is not wider than the 3-door. It's the same. Again, what we checked with Mahindra was that the front section till the B-pillar is largely the same.
Okay.
They've done some improvements, which is like they've changed the door hinges so that the door shuts easily. Those things they're saying will also follow back to the Thar 3-door.
So some of the improvements will go back, but what we are actually looking for is the substantial changes like the suspension to go back, and that would really improve the experience, but we don't know how or when that happens.
Yeah. So cabin, clear. Driving, clear. What is left? Fuel efficiency. What we saw was, now this is where I'm slightly surprised, and we wanted more clarity from Mahindra about what exactly they've done with the mechanicals in terms of the running gear, because the Scorpio N surprised me with its fuel efficiency. It was almost as good as the XUV 700, which wasn't the case here.
Okay.
It's a bit lower than I remember the Scorpio N to be. In the city, decent, about anywhere between 9 to 11, typically in the 10 zone, is what I saw. And on the highway, it ranged from 13 to 17.
Okay.
So not bad at the upper end, but I did see 13 and that space
It
for
fell
a fair bit.
quite a bit also. Okay.
So I don't know why or what it is, what's causing this, because the Scorpio N was impressive on this one.
Right.
So that is a question mark, and we'll see about that when we spend more time with the car. What else? Yes. Reliability is a question that will always come up with Mahindra. And to this, how I put it is, yes, there will be issues.
Okay.
But typically with Mahindra, the issues are niggles, small, few, addressable. Not something that will leave you stranded. That is how I look at it. So hesitation while recommending a Mahindra, yes, there is some. Because of these aspects, ideally you want a scenario where you don't have to think about this. You don't have to worry about service experience. And Mahindra service centers by and large are okay, but they are not the best either. So these are things in terms of the ownership experience that you will have to factor in if you're looking at Roxx.
Does the Bolero have these kind of niggles also?
You know, I haven't Bolero, I drove so long back. It's so simple, yeah. I don't know how many niggles it will have.
I was just making a point. Crash test ratings?
No, they've not shared any ratings.
There cannot be a Mahindra without a 5-star rating. Come
It
on.
must be. It must be. Now we're saying this for
Must
Tata and
be,
Mahindra. Aayega, I'm sure aayega.
I mean, from whatever you've said, whoever is inside the Thar Roxx already has star rating from everybody else who's looking at the Thar Roxx.
Oh my God, the attention is another level.
Yeah.
Another level.
You think some of it is just because it's brand new? Or you think this is something lasting that will just stay and you'll always be a star?
No, of course, it's because it's new. But some of it, like see, when you see a Thar on the road, the 3-door, you look at it. There's no two ways about it. The same thing will apply for this.
Nice.
It has presence. And that it drives better gives a sense of appreciation for it. It's just that this format of vehicle, for me, the worry is that it's a bully attitude that comes with it. It's so easy to get sucked into it. And I know I've heard these arguments from friends in the NCR region that women need cars like this.
Yeah.
Because this is incredible. I mean, I can't imagine it, but this friends from Gurgaon have said this, that their wives need big cars.
Yeah.
Because otherwise people are coming and bullying them on the road. If they're in a SUV of this sort, then they are safer.
Yeah, I've heard this from somebody we know mutually. And she had a long commute. She used to stay somewhere in Hoskhasish and she used to work in Noida-ish. And back in the day, I said, so what do you drive? And she said, I have a Scorpio. And I was like, why Scorpio? Because at that point, we were already driving the Scorpio, the first generation Scorpios, I think, a few years in. And we knew that they rocked front and they rocked back and they rocked side. And she's like, I get off from work at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. When I'm going home in Delhi in that time of the night, I just need the biggest car I can have. And the biggest affordable car I can buy right now is a Scorpio. So I'm quite happy to be driving the Scorpio. I don't care whether it is good, bad or ugly. It's the car that does my safety quotient. I get home.
Yeah. So, I mean, for some people, it's a tool. But for some people, it's just like, like when they say you've got a hammer in your hand, the whole world looks
You're
like
looking
a
for
nail.
a nail, yeah, absolutely.
So, I'm not saying you're going to do it, but I'm just saying be cognizant that it will spur certain changes in attitude. It's like we spoke about luxury cars.
Yeah.
You just look down at everybody else around you because you're in a luxury car. This also does that. So, treat people well.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Is it time for my quick summary then?
Just one thing I'll add, which was a complaint for people, especially taller occupants, specifically drivers. The front seat base, the base was not very long, which continues to be the same here. So that might be a bit of a miss for some. It still doesn't get telescopic steering. I did not have an issue getting a comfortable enough seating position, but it can be a problem for some.
It's not adjustable enough.
Yeah, it's not enough adjustability. Though the good thing is seat height adjustment is standard. I'm really happy to see that. And Mahindra has done some of that weird thing that the base variant does have 6 airbags, but ESP and some of those features are not there. TPMS comes higher up, stuff like that. I think these kind of things should just be standardized, and they've done this with every new launch of theirs. I don't know why they're doing it, but I mean.
So on all the other cars, ESP, TPMS, etc. is standard across, but in this particular case, it's not. Is that what you're saying?
Even in the Roxx?
Or this weirdness is going on in every...
this weirdness is there.
Okay.
Right? So like for instance, 6 airbags may be there in all the variants, right from the base, but ESP may not, or TC may not.
So it becomes harder and harder to crash as you go up the ladder. But if you have a crash, they're all roughly the same
No, so
amount
then
of
think of
protection.
it this way, that these are their hook price variants, which is they're just trying to get your attention. So this 13 lakh mark is really just to get your attention. That's how I
Yeah,
think
and
about it.
in some cases, good luck trying to buy one.
And we recently heard from one of our viewers who booked a 3XO, the base one,
Yeah,
at
I
seven
read.
and a
Yeah.
half lakh rupees.
Yep.
And he booked it when the car was launched.
Yep.
And he messaged us a few weeks ago and said that he's been told by the dealer that delivery is only going to happen in December.
Yeah.
Which is not good.
Yeah, so which is why I said good luck trying to buy the cheap version of the Roxx. You may not ever get it.
Yeah.
All right, now it's my turn.
Go, sir. I swear he has a much harder job doing this.
No, it's the simplest thing ever. I get to make all the jokes now. Today we were talking about the Mahindra Thar Roxx, and what Kartik basically says is it does rock quite a bit. But given the fact that it's a body-on-frame kind of vehicle, it can only rock so much before it has to give up. And Mahindra has done a commendable job of what they've managed to get this car to do. To do this, the first thing you should know is, while the Thar and the Scorpio have similar platforms, the Roxx is a family member, but not honestly on the same platform. The platform has evolved further. Mahindra is basically saying this is something they develop for themselves. And we're now hoping that what we've seen of the Roxx allows Mahindra to take these developments certainly to the Scorpio N, hopefully also to the three-door Thar. Both cars will improve as a result, because the first thing he said, which is super positive about the Roxx, is it becomes a lot easier to drive now. Despite the fact that it has 19-inch wheels, the steering wheel is well weighted, light in the city, reasonably comfortable on highway, body movement, wheel movement is controlled really well. So there is some judder and shudder, but it's very far away from where you would normally expect a body on frame car to do. So you'll get a lot more done with this car before you feel uncomfortable, which versus a monocoque is very hard for these kind of machines to do. So can you go out on the highway and have a reasonably good time? Kartik says, for the first time he's saying this for something from the Thar family, you could. He's still not saying it's so good that this will be our primary 5-seater car, not yet. But this is the closest we've ever seen Mahindra come. This is pretty as close to a body-on-frame car coming to that we've seen. So the handling, it's predictable, and before you get too into a weird situation, ESP cuts in and saves you. Just remember, ESP comes in the higher variants. Lower variants have the 6 airbags, but they don't really have ESP.
Lowest one does.
Lowest one. So when you're doing the variants, just check. There are two things that Kartik specifically pointed out here. One is the windshield has noise cutting properties that are really useful, because the upper variant, and he drove the top variant, the diesel with the automatic. That version, the NVH levels, the noise, vibration and harshness levels inside the cabin is really tightly controlled. Part of that is the windscreen, but that windscreen is not common to all of the Thar Roxxes. There are the lower variants which get a different normal glass, and you'll hear more noise inside that car. And since it's a squared off shape, the corners make extra wind noise at highway speeds, so it is going to affect you. So if you can, get the versions with that sound insulating windshield if you can. Now, inside the cabin, it's a large car on the outside, not so large on the inside, although he didn't call it cramped. And what he means by that is, visually, you get the sense of really large car, therefore must be spacious inside. Doesn't really translate into that. Is it non-spacious? No, it's just not as large as you think. So second row occupants, you will be fine. For your elders in the family, remember, they're climbing up into this car, and that may not be everybody's cup of tea. Take them to the dealership and make them climb into the car to see if it works for them or not. If they're infrequent visitors, yeah, you'll be fine. But if they're living with you and you have to do this on a daily basis, maybe you want to look for something a little bit lower. The Roxx is just going to be too tall, and they're not going to be happy about it. They might even throw rocks at you. Now, the front row, it's comfortable enough. What he said is two things to notice, especially if you're really tall. The steering wheel doesn't telescope, which means you can't adjust how far away from it is from you. And the seat, the bottom is not long enough. So some tall people might have a little bit of a struggle finding a really comfortable driving position. He's 5'6". Kartik did not struggle at all, but he's saying potentially he's thinking more and more that tall people may have a little bit of a struggle there.
And long distances again.
Especially over long distances, being able to sit comfortably in one place for a long time, it is a bigger challenge than it appears to be. And I think he said this on one of his shorts also. You won't understand the criticality of it until somebody makes you spend 12 hours in the driver's seat in a car, and then it really hurts if it's not right. Now, the boot space, Mahindra has a ridiculously high 600-liter number. Don't take that too seriously, because that's measured by marketing all the way to the roof. When the engineering guys measure it, it's a far more reasonable 460-odd liters, which is not a small number, which means if you have 5 people in the car, there'll be enough space for most of their luggage, and you'll have the option of stacking it further above the seat height if you want to. So, spacious car on the inside, reasonably, not great, but all the basics are covered very well. Inside, there are now screens. So you've got the Adrenox screen in the middle, you've got the driver's instrument display, and Karthik says the feature set is pretty much close to complete because you've got front parking sensors, rear parking sensors, you've got 360-degree camera, you've got all the basic bits in place. This car has much sweeter and low volume chimes compared to say the 3XO, but it is constantly calling for your attention, and a little bit more maturity in the UI UX design is required, where the screen is constantly throwing information at you, and it seems like nobody at Mahindra stopped to curate which of these are critical things that we need to show the driver and which is something that we can just leave. And in many cases, the screen switches to show your notifications, which is also a little bit of a disconnect. And he was not very happy about it. And it says Android Auto and CarPlay on the brochure. We don't know when CarPlay, actually we know when CarPlay is coming. It's in the name of the system, Adreno X. X is the date when the CarPlay arrives. Now, there is a large spread of variants, and engines have 2 states of tune. It's a pretty confusing lineup. Again, Karthik drove the top diesel with the automatic and he enjoyed the performance quite a bit. But you should know that buying the Thar Roxx, which have the great prices, which he calls hook prices, which is the way to get you to the showroom, that might actually be impossible. Just to give you an example, we had a viewer buy himself a 3XO right at the start. Booking has been done, and now the dealers told him that there's no hope of him getting delivery before December. His option is to move up to a higher version if he wants to and get delivery much faster. We're going to assume that the Roxx will be the same story. So if you're going in for the base, what appear to be value models, be careful. You may not get your delivery as fast as you think. So overall, he's very happy to recommend this as your second car. It does a lot of stuff around the city and out on the highway really well for a car of this format. It's a really attractive car to everybody around you. And if you like being the center of attention, Thar is going to rock your world. But what you should remember is it's not the best car you could have if the lifestyle component was not super central to your car purchase. So if you want something more practical, easier to drive, take people around easier, very similar prices near the top are cars like the Creta and the Seltos, etc. Grand Vitara, there's a lot of cars in there, Elevate.
XUV700 as well.
XUV700 as well. All of these cars will do most of the jobs better than the Thar Roxx can. But where the Thar 3-door was, the Thar Roxx is a far superior car and it's far easier therefore to live with. It's still not at the same level. Karthik has also warned, as it is with all Mahindras, do expect a few niggles here and there along the way. With Mahindra, what we are pretty sure about is rarely are the niggles deal breakers or things that will strand you on the road, but there are minor irritations that will come. And in theory, you could live with them, but that's what gives us pause in recommending Mahindras generally when we get asked this question. That's the story of the Thar Roxx. Have I missed anything?
Nope, I've missed out on stuff.
There is no crash test rating, which is why we didn't mention a crash test rating. And I know, a Mahindra without a crash test rating, who would have thought? But here we are.
I missed out the sound system. In this is a Harman Kardon, whereas in the Scorpio is a Sony. So this is a great system.
Okay.
So in some ways, even though it's cheaper than the Scorpio N, it seems to be better equipped. So the value quotient is strong.
Yeah.
So the sound system gets ADAS, which was switched off, but it's there.
Oh yeah, and he has warned you that this car does give you the bully attitude straight away built into the car. You get into the driver's seat, you strap yourself in, and now you're a bully. Whenever that happens to you, remember it's you who did something. You cannot blame it on the car. Be nice. Be considerate of people around you. If you're driving the biggest car on the road, you have the biggest responsibility to take care of everybody else around you. Otherwise, you're just behaving badly.
I remembered. The biggest annoyance actually used to be all the chimes and all. And that they've toned down, and thank God for that. So I just wanted to stress on that. Okay.
What happens next to Mahindra now?
Now they'll have a whole bunch of launches.
But how? There are no national festivals coming.
They'll make one.
2nd October.
Yeah, because they have the XUV700 electric.
MG edition.
Will come. What edition?
MG.
MG edition. Huh?
I'm just guessing here.
So that is slated.
Because I think they have this thing inside, right? We will not let any national festival go unlaunched, as it were.
I don't know what's happening on the inside.
But tell me this, I wanted to ask you this, and it's a little bit late in the day to be asking this question, okay, I get it. But if a manufacturer hosts the launch of an event, and they say you can bring your +1 spouse with you, or,
I don't want to discuss
No,
this.
1 second. No, I'm just asking a question. What is less classy? The manufacturer inviting you like this, or you accepting the invitation and taking your +1 with you to the event?
I don't want to discuss this.
He doesn't want to discuss this, ladies and gentlemen, so we move on.
I don't.
I
don't want to get into it, man. I have nothing to do.
I accept. We move on.
Yeah.
I said we'll move on. So the XUV 700 is now what, 3 years old? So the facelift should be due.
Yeah.
The Thar is older than that, so that should also be due. Is that
They've got lots, yeah. I mean,
okay?
they've got their EVs. And in fact, talking about,
Oh yeah, the B line should also be arriving sometime soon, right?
yes, next year.
Okay.
And that's the interesting thing. And this is where, it takes a lot of, you have to get real with yourself. The reason to start the BE line was to say that there's a certain audience that won't come to Mahindra.
Right.
Let's say because of the kind of imagery that the Thar and the kind of attraction that is created with a certain audience.
Sure.
And for them, then a Mahindra is not really an option. So the BE range has been created to attract a different audience now.
Okay.
Which is largely electric, yes, but the aesthetic and the appeal of it.
I'm assuming that presumes a little bit more urban, a little bit more urban centric,
Yeah.
a little more sophisticated, let's call it.
I'm just going to say, please restrain. Restraint is a very important part of our lives. And this is something, please, I hope. Tata and Mahindra are the two Indian companies. And when we talk about being patriotic, yeah, we want them to do better. And this is our expectation, that be champions, and we'll be the cheerleaders for you as you go to the world, but it has to have that class about it.
Okay. More class.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep. Car, classy. Yes.
Do let us know what you think of the car. And if there's anything we haven't answered, as usual, please do leave us a comment. Thank you so much for watching MotorInc First.